Acid based here with Marco. Acid based here with Frank. So we're here with Marina.
I'm here with Sam.
Acid based here with Samir, freight carrier sitting with Fook. Acid based here with Duke. Acid based here with Augie. Acid based here with Hector. Acid based here with Dyaln.
You didn't feel it.
Yeah, go on. What is going on, everybody? Acid Base Season 2, Episode 4. Going to be joined today with Dylan, the CEO of Freight Essentials. Just before we hop into today's episode, got to get through the efrouting top hauls of the week. Coming in at the number 1 spot, it's going to be a Columbus, Ohio to Carlisle, PA, 320 miles between 3.1 to 5.1 a mile on the dry van side. I heard there's going to be a huge storm out in PA tomorrow. Roads are already starting to get shut down as of today, tonight, so be careful out there. Got a Charleston, West Virginia in the number 2 spot over to Carlisle again for 2.8 to again up to $5. Definitely going to be some hazard pay reasons for the reflection of the rates there. Coming in at the number 1 spot on reefer, Madison, Wisconsin over to Muncie, Indiana. You got 376 on the miles for 3.6 to almost $6 a mile. So I don't know who's hauling that one, but somebody's got some nice freight in their truck. Then we got a New York over to Maryland, 317 on the miles, going for 4.3 to almost 8.2 on the high end. So I guess Northeast freight, going to be lots of storms, snow. Northeast freight's going off. On the flatbed side, got a Demopolis, Alabama to Central City, Kentucky, 372 miles for between $3 and 4.4. And then the last spot is a Fairmont, West Virginia over to Allentown, 310 on the miles, 3.8 to 4.8 on that one. A lot of variance in the RPMs this week. Going into the best loop for dry van, starting out in Vermont, heading over to South Carolina, then Milwaukee, Muncie, over to Philly, back to Vermont. Average work week between 7.4 and almost 8 grand on that one. RPM 2.3 to 2.5 almost. So some pretty typical dry van stuff. Heading over to the reefer section. Going to start out at Springfield, Mass. Head over to Dallas. Go over to New York, Allentown, back to Mass. A little bit of a longer week, but hitting up almost 10 grand to 13 grand on the gross there. 3.6 on the top end for the RPM. Reefer freight's doing nice. And finishing off in the flatbed loop is going to be a Lewiston, Maine origin over to Muncie, over to Akron, Lafayette, Milwaukee, back to Lewiston. Average work week 10.4 to 11 grand. Freight market's looking pretty decent this week. But let's hop into today's show with Dylan. How's it going, man?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me on, and look forward to discussing lots of topics today.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure the community's seen your face around. I mean, you've been kind of pretty much plastered everywhere over the past 1, 2, 3 weeks. Definitely some interesting situation you've kind of got involved in.
Nope, 100%. Been on lots of different podcasts. Been very fortunate to have some great conversations. I think by the end of this week, we will have been on maybe 10 different ones. But I think the message that we're getting out there about transparency, not just in the agent model, but in the logistics industry as a whole, is one that has been needed for many years. I've been talking with lots of people who've been reaching out to me. I've had hundreds and hundreds of new connections on LinkedIn. And a lot of people are telling me things that have been happening in the industry for 25, 30 years, not just to do with agents, and all the stuff that we have already exposed or in the process of exposing right now. So I look forward to having a great talk with you as well.
Yeah, I look forward to it too. And shout out to Tiffany for noticing the intro upgrades. We're enjoying the vibe of the intros as well as we head into real world content. But just to get into this episode a little bit calmer, man, how did you get into logistics? What was your first job?
Yep. So my first job was at a freight quote by C.H. Robinson out of Kansas City. After college, I played football at the University of Kansas Division I football. I worked in athletics for a few years, went and got my MBA classes. And then after that, didn't really know what I wanted to do. So on a whim, did a sales executive position for Freight Quote by C.H. Robinson. They had been purposely acquired before I started. And so I was there for 3 years, and that was really my first experience in freight.
So what was your first rollout in C.H. Robinson when you got over there?
Yeah, so they had a great 8-week training program. At least then, I know they've changed it since I was there. But you did training for 8 weeks, like in a classroom, learning about what is a flatbed, what is a drive-in, what is pallet
terminology,
all the stuff. And so honestly, it was very thorough. It was very good. I have nothing negative to say about that. And so then I was just an account executive or a sales executive. So on the phone, cold calling, and just really had a knack for it. Very competitive. So I started to compete against myself, compete against other team members. Ended up having the largest book of business in the first 3 months in company history, won Rookie of the Year. And so that was really my first experience in freight. And I have a very addictive personality. So for me, that was great to see, success relatively fast. And that was my first take.
That's extremely fast.
Yes. So it was a very positive experience. And I'm like, well, I've said before, no one I think ever wakes up in the morning or, graduates high school or graduates college. It's like, I want to be a freight broker today. But honestly, it's one of the most lucrative careers. And, I'm 32 years old right now. I've had a lot of experience. I've made a lot of money, had a lot of, opportunities. And I don't think there's too many fields, maybe besides being a professional athlete, that you would be able to grow this quickly and make this amount of money, being 32 years old. And, it's a career that anybody can do, whether you're 32 or 62. So.
Yeah, I mean, we had discussed the pre-show as sort of in a negative light, the low barrier to entry, but obviously with a story like this, there is also a massive positive light on the low barrier to entry. I mean, this is a lucrative business. Take us through some steps. What would you say to people starting out in this industry? How did you manage to grow a book that quickly from the start?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing in this industry is you have to be willing to be persistent and consistent and disciplined, and those are kind of the 3 words I like to live by. But you got to be able to persistent. You got to be able to show up every day. Cold calling, especially when you don't have customers, is not the funnest thing. But if you can make those 100, 150 cold calls a day, if there's a method behind your madness, so you're just not, shooting, scattering bullets everywhere. But if there's a method behind your madness, you follow up, you use your email effectively. I know a lot of people get spammed with emails now, but if you don't get someone on the phone, shoot them an email. When you follow up, shoot them a follow-up email. And if you're willing to do that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, when I first started, I was the first one in the office and I was the last one out of the office. that ended up, getting me in trouble because, in a W-2 position, they don't want to pay you overtime, etc. But, if I could tell anyone what was my recipe to success, no difference when I was in college. I graduated first in my class. I was valedictorian, spoke at graduation. I was not the smartest person. Of course, my intelligence, etc. Yes, but in college, or whether it was in athletics or when I started my freight career, it was the fact that I was willing to work harder than almost anybody else. Even to this day, I don't think I'm the best person on the phone, etc. But I'm willing to be persistent. And then that kind of parallels into being consistent. So you're willing to, just bang your head against the wall time after time after time. You do that for a consistent period of time. You stay disciplined with what your goal is that you set out for yourself. So if you say, I'm brand new, I want to book my first shipment this week. Okay, 2 weeks in, I want to be doing 3K a margin. A month in, I want to be doing 6K. You need to live and die by that. Like, your life depends on you getting 3K a margin. Too many people, they just don't hit their goal, and it's like, well, shit, that, I'll come back
next
tomorrow.
week, next month. Yeah.
Yes. So and that's really, once we get into all the lawsuit stuff, that's really what catapulted me after, all these things transpired, is I had to go build a whole new book of business. And now I had an extreme pressure behind my back in order to do that. So it's like, okay, well, today we need to do X. By a month from now, we need to do X. So I think setting goals and actually keeping yourself accountable, and looking in the mirror. Did I do, when I woke up from the time I went to bed, did I keep myself accountable? Did I reach whatever that goal was, whether it was a call count, email count, text message amount, whatever it is? That's what I think made me successful, not the fact that I was, so good looking, or, I'm so good on the phone or anything like that. So.
No, I'm really happy to hear you say that. I mean, yesterday I had the chance to go out filming with HMD. We spent the day with them, and my camera guy and editors, like a younger guy. And, I've been kind of having a lot of dialogue with him, which is cool because it helps me self-reflect on like my business sense and, the morals I sort of do business by. And the biggest foundation of our conversation, I told him, I'm like, I've never been the smartest person in the room. I've definitely never been the smartest person academically. When it came to athletics, I was never the most talented, but I always told him, like, I just show up, man. People will tell me maybe you're not the smartest, but I'll work harder than anybody around me. And that's always been a philosophy that if you're not the smartest, you can definitely outwork people. And I'm happy to hear somebody confirm that the very next day. So I'll have him come back, clip that, and drop that tomorrow.
Yes.
No, so thank you. Everyone coming on the podcast is teaching my editor life skills these days too. So that's cool.
Yes, no, 100%. I think that's the most important thing in life. Anything that you do, whether, it's relationships, whether it's with your kids. I have a small daughter, being a parent doesn't come with a handbook, but, if you try your hardest every day, and you try to live morally and ethically, whether that's in your business or with your kids or with your wife or your husband or whatever it is, whatever lifestyle that you choose to have or that you're blessed, to be able to have, if you take that same sentiment to everything, I think ultimately at the end of the day, when you look back on your life, you're going to be pretty happy with what you accomplished. But that's not going to be an easy path, and that's not always a linear path. I think too many people get stuck on like this linear progression. Sometimes you might have a linear progression and then it dips, and then you have but overall, if you stay at this for the long haul, I think you're going to be pretty happy at the end of the day with where you end up, if you live life up to standards.
They always say a long-term consistency trumps short-term intensity. That was I played football through high school too. That was our coach's mentality, and that's something that stuck with me. But let's keep going through your career. So you end up at CH, spent a couple of years over there, build a big book. What's your next step?
Yeah, so I found out I wasn't a very good W-2 employee, after a few years, and I was speaking out against change. Our commission structures were changing. Very vocal about those things. So I actually ended up being terminated from that position December 2019 because I improperly put a day in of vacation pay. But here nor there, had a good time there. Have nothing bad to say about them. I just wasn't cut out for corporate America.
And I also want to just emphasize to anybody that watches this back. You said something that I forgot to touch on that I also agree with, right? Like, you were a W-2, you weren't paid your overtime, you weren't paid to come in early and to leave late, but that advanced your career. And sometimes I think people really start looking too much on the dollar values of things. And I understand, do we want to be paid overtime? Of course we do. But unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But you advance your career to heights you couldn't imagine by putting that effort in. Yes. And I think people really look at the current dollar value of their time and not maybe the future dollar value of what that overtime could have done for them.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I think too many people focus on the dollar right now, not the dollar ahead. And I'm a big component or a big advocate, of you need to show what you're worth and the money will come. And whether
Yeah.
that's to your boss or to you personally, because I've had many employees, especially recently with all the publicity, a lot of people have reached out, oh, we'd love to work for you. You're open, you're transparent. Okay, that's amazing. Then I asked them, well, what do you want to be at? Do you want to be 1099? Are you W-2? What is it? And these people want these outrageous W-2 salaries as, a broker, or as an agent or whatever the case may be. And to me, I like, the motto of you kill what you eat, and that's what's so attractive, I think, to a lot of agency programs where there's no salary or maybe there's a draw or a stipend or whatever. But if you're looking for 100, 200K salary and you'd rather have a tiny bit of commission, to me, that doesn't seem like you're very fucking hungry, because if I'm hungry and I want to eat what I want to kill, I want that 35% commission, that 40%, that 70%, who cares about the salary? That'll become peanuts at a certain point, So I think when you're going, if you're a W-2 employee now and you're looking for a new position, or you're an agent, you're looking for a new agency model, don't just think about like, what is the dollar right now? Think about what's the long-term plan here. But that also entails you having confidence in yourself that you can reach that goal. Because when you have that little demon on your shoulder who's like, well, what happens if you lose your biggest customer? Well, then you go get a new one, and I see too many freight agents or W-2 employees. They get stuck in this rut of a $30,000, $40,000 book of profit business, GP per month. And then they lose a customer and their life, is deteriorated, or they don't know how to grow from there, or they're not entrusting, other people to help them from an operational perspective. And so they're cradle to graving everything, because, well, nobody else can touch my truckloads because they won't do as good as me. And trust me, I've had all these thoughts, over time. So it's like, you got to entrust in yourself. You got to believe in yourself. Once you get to a certain point, you need to have other people that can help you, to grow and scale the business. But yeah, that's my little, life advice right there.
Yeah, I mean, I have going back to that whole football coach. I mean, that guy taught me a lot, man. Football is a great sport. He always told me the most money is stolen with your eyes. And that's in terms of, when you get your base level job, entry level job, I mean, you're not going to get paid from the base level pay. You're going to get paid from learning and what your eyes are seeing. That's where the money comes from. Yep. And so, I mean, I don't know. It's just funny stuff to me. But so you end up saying, okay, W-2 is not for me. I'm working my butt off. I want to bet on myself. Yep. What's your next step? I'm assuming, obviously, into the agent model.
Yeah. So I went over to the agent model, went over to Global Trans, started there. Didn't really take any of my customers. CH was nice to hit me with a cease and desist. And so I taking in my customers, but I said, hey, I grew the book of business once. I'm very confident in my abilities now. I'm a very introverted individual. So we'll go do it again. So there, January of 2020, a few months before COVID, which was most people think was inoptimal timing. It was actually, I believe, very optimal because I was able to once again grow very quickly. I did like 15,000 of GP or gross profit my first month, 20, 25. So by the time COVID hit, we're at least in a decent, thing. At that point, I was only had myself, so I was cradle to graving everything, and then went through COVID. I was, trying to think optimally, like, okay, well, what products are going to be essential during COVID? What needs to be moved? Masks, gloves, hand sanitizers, food products. That's when you can put on the BOLs and yellow highlights about, being an essential, and they didn't have to follow driving regulations. So, kind of navigated my way during that time. And then continued to grow. By the end of that year, was doing $70,000, $75,000 a month of gross profit or GP. And coming from a position where that's what I made in a year, I'm like, man, this is fucking amazing. I'm making great money. Then I decided to move down to Miami in 2020 because I grew up and lived in Kansas City. Went to college in Kansas City. I was working in Kansas City, and I'm like, well, let's see what else life has to offer. I had traveled a lot playing sports, both in middle school, high school, and college. So I'm like, well, I know there's other things out there besides Kansas City. It was a great place to live, great wholesome Midwest values, but hey, let's try something else. And, I think for me personally, I always like to see things that I can achieve. I'm very much like a task-oriented type of person. So, in a place like Kansas City or in a lot of Midwest communities, if you're making $75,000 a month, like you're in the top tier 0.1%, you move down to Miami and you got Bugattis and Lamborghinis and Ferraris, the apartments are $40 million, down in Miami Beach. Now it's a dose of a reality check. Like, man, I thought I had arrived a few months ago making this type of money. Now I can't even I can't even afford a car down here if I want to, So to me, that was a huge motivating factor. Sometimes you need to change your environment to change yourself.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was also going through this. Sorry to cut you off, man. It's a perfect segue. Like with my editor again yesterday, where I was explaining to him, there's levels to life, man. And I always thought, at a certain point, that at the place where I am now, I was like, oh, like that's the part. When I get to this point in my life, then I've made it. And I realize now that I am at this point in my life that all I really did was just now I'm at the bottom of the next level. Like,
yes.
I'm in the top of where I thought I wanted to be. I thought I was going to be on top of the world. And I hit this level. I'm like, I'm actually just like the bottom of, the better level. And like you said, I think changing your environment and being around people to push you, that having people around you that are higher than you and that have ridiculous amounts of money. It is a reality check, right? Because when you're in these smaller places, I mean, me, for example, I spent the last 4 or 5 years out in Serbia, and I mean, our national average salary is $700. So you can imagine that there's not a high population or high percent of people around me that would be pushing, those type of salaries that we're talking about.
Yeah. No, 100%.
So maybe I'll move to Miami next. Like.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think life is it's all about levels. I think life is like a game. And, you think you get to one level and then there's another level, and everyone has different parameters in their head. You think, okay, when I make $100,000 a year, I'm going to have made it. When I made $250,000, when I made $500,000, when I made $1 million a year, I've made all that. I've made a lot more than that in a year. We've been very successful, very fortunate, with what we've done. And so, but every time you move up, you just start to spend more, or you start to, you open your eyes, or, you go to the Monaco F1 and now it's like Bugatti, 300-foot yacht, $1,000 to go to this party. And you're like, man, there's a whole nother level to this. And like I said, so for me, it's always been, it's an exciting thing. It's a reality check of, okay, well, we went from 50K a year to 100K to 500K to $1 million. How do I get to 10 million now? How do I get to 15? Yeah. That's not everyone's thought process. I think you have to be a little crazy inside. You have to love what you do. If you're just chasing dollars, you will get burnt out at some point. But yeah, so we moved to Miami, and that was a great experience. Moved down there, like I said, during COVID. A lot of parts of the United States weren't so hot. There wasn't a lot to do. So I'm like, well, shit, let's go to Miami. We go there, and I started networking a whole lot. I'm big into working out. Like I said, I played college football, etc. And so working out's a huge part of my life. So I'm going to different gyms. I'm meeting different people. And we ended up picking up, one of our largest customers down there, Redcon One, which was like the largest supplement company, in America at the time, and still is one of the top. Run into the CEO at the gym. We start talking. And so, we get in with that account, and then things start to catapult. I start getting referrals. I start going to conferences, and in 3.5 years, we built that business to doing $30 to $40 million of revenue a year. And we went from being the bottom of the barrel agent. At the time I joined, I think there was 1,200 agents or 1,000 agents with Global Trends. And by 2023, we're the number one agency, with gross profits. So it was
I wanna end up clipping this, man. This is like a perfect situation because I was also, like I said, an athlete throughout high school and going into university, and I fell out of it. Obviously, I completely fell out of it once I started working full time. The gym wasn't a priority, being healthy wasn't a priority, but I worked manual labor jobs, so it was kind of okay. And I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine today, where trucking really killed me because that was my first office job, and like my habits were all the same, but I wasn't moving anymore. So I started getting really out of shape. But just long story short, 100 days ago, I started hitting the gym very hard again. Completed a pretty insane deadlift. Like from 90 days ago, I went from deadlifting maybe 110 kilos to 170 on a one rep. So that's like 375 pounds. I'm like pretty proud of that number. I know it's nothing crazy, but anyways, the long story short is you end up, taking your health serious, and that's how you land your best customer. And we're going to be training for a triathlon here at the end of September in Serbia. It's my first one ever. I've competed in my entire life. But if you've ever needed more motivation in the trucking industry to go to the gym, you're like the third or fourth person that's been on the show that has said, I've met one of my best customers in a gym. So if you ever need more motivation,
I think the gym is so important. I own a gym now. I have a plan. I'm actually in the works of hopefully acquiring or purchasing a second gym, and I want to open up many more. For one, it's a great model. They're expensive again to the beginning because you got to buy all the equipment. It's an asset-heavy business to begin with. But I think the gym is so great. It teaches you a lot of lessons. It teaches you the power of one more, which I know Tony Robbins and other people have talked about before, but doing one more rep, one more day, one more exercise, one more minute on the treadmill, one more pound, whatever it is, but it really teaches you this life lesson. And the biggest thing with the gym is it's not immediate gratification. So for you just mentioned that's phenomenal. 90, 100 days in, you're now starting to see results. But if you just took your picture from day 1 to day 2, you're going to see no different. So you have to be consistent, persistent, and disciplined. And so for me, once I got done playing football, I was very competitive. I got into bodybuilding. Bodybuilding, you have extreme highs, extreme lows, you're dieting, you're bulking, you're cutting, all these different things, but you don't ever see progress in one day. And I think that's why the gym is so powerful. It teaches you these life lessons, and then you can go take that into your life. And, I think you look at so many people who are massively successful, like David Goggins, et cetera. And obviously they have, their whole company and their whole mantras around the gym. But if you take a snippet of that, whatever it is for you, whether it's running a triathlon, bodybuilding, going to yoga classes, going to spin classes, just teaching you to have that discipline day in and day out, and then you really learn that most of the gym is your diet, which is 24/7. You can never escape the diet. There's nothing wrong with having a cheat meal, having a drink or a whiskey or a scotch or whatever your vice is, a cigar, but 95% of the time you need to be on your game. And that's kind of the same thing in logistics. There's no one saying that you can't have fun. You can't go for a night out with the boys or the girls or whatever, but you need to be on your game 95% of the time. You're going to have your cell phone handy. You're going to have to be willing to work those long days, and once you do that, you can you start to create very nice capital for yourself, very nice income, and it allows you, additional opportunities. So, no, I think the gym is a great thing. I'm excited for you that you're back in the gym.
Same.
I think so.
No, I mean, I think the gym is the ultimate 1 versus 1. And, this mentality, I don't know where I read it, probably somewhere on LinkedIn, hard body, hard mind. And I've always thought about that one, right? Where like the gym is the only thing. I was thinking about this too, obviously, with my financial situation, doing a lot better these days. And I mean, you could buy basically anything you want in life, man. The only thing you can't buy is fitness. That's like the absolute only thing on earth that no amount of money will ever. Nobody can get on that bike for you. Nobody can run for you. Nobody can lift that weight for you. And I mean, I think that's the ultimate motivation.
No, and I think a big mindset is you want to be physically harder, and mentally stronger than your competition. And for me, that's been a big thing over the last year and a half when I've been in these lawsuits. Let's segue
into this. Let me just tee you up for it. So what are you doing these days? What is your current operation looking like, just before we get into the crazy stuff?
Yep. So when we were at Global Trans, like I said, built a great business, had a team of 25 with me, all my employees. And so that obviously, came to an end, and we'll get into that. And so I knew I needed to do that again. I could do it again. I think the defendants in this case doubted I could do it again. They called me seemingly successful at one point, which I got a kick out of. It angered me a little bit, but that's okay. It drove me forward. And so now we have our own MC number. We operate completely independently. I actually went to another agency model for about a year after the Global Trans experience, and then decided, like, man, I just need to do my own thing. I have enough relationships, et cetera, that I don't need to be working with anybody else, exposing my data to anybody else. Had a lot of issues with people being bad partners, which we'll get into, because when you have an agency model, et cetera, you're trusting people with your data. And when they do wrong by that and breach those things, kind of leaves you with a sour taste in your mouth. So, have our own MC, have our own company, have 25 people who do operations, who do sales. Really over the last 18 months, it's been a huge motivating factor for me, to grow at a rapid rate. We did from 0 to 20 million in 10 months, and now we just continue to grow and grow and grow.
Are you guys running on the split model or cradle to grave model? How do you guys operate?
With people that come work for us?
Yeah, like the internal side of it.
So some of both. So like if it's someone who wants to come in as like more of an agent type of role, depending what they've done in the past. But really, I think the most optimal situation is someone who has customers who most people are good at selling. You can't be good at everything. And I will be the first to admit that, for a long time, I had a pretty crazy book of business that I ran myself. If I said the numbers, people would think it was crazy that you could do that amount of truckload by yourself. I don't think I ever slept, which I don't sleep much anymore now. But, I think the biggest thing is being able to identify what you are good at. And so for me, I'm very extroverted. I love to sell. I love to talk to people. I love to build relationships. I don't love all the operation stuff, so really I was able to catapult my business and my own, success or excellence, when I realized, okay, what am I good at? Okay, what am I not good at? Let me go have someone else do that. Let me bring on a business partner. Let me hire people, etc. And so now when we have people come in, I try to talk to people like, hey, maybe you did it differently over here. You cradled to grave everything. Maybe I might offer a slightly less percentage, whether that's a salary or a split, etc. But now my operations team will do all of it. And there's no agency model. There's some agency models that do like inside agents versus outside agents, but the splits are drastically different when they offer you that, and is their team actually any good at covering trucks and doing the operations? So that's really, I kind of have this hybrid deal now. And of course, if someone's very adamant and it makes sense financially, then we'll look at it. But, I really want people to utilize our team because I know I've taught our team. I've been in person with our team. And if you're an agent or you're a W-2 and you're really good at selling, well, let's go, double or triple the size of your book. Maybe the commission slightly less, but do you want, a smaller piece of a larger pie? You look at Elon Musk and all these people who own these massive multi-billion, trillion-dollar companies. A lot of them are only 10% owners. But they could have never reached that, trillion-dollar company valuation if they had 100% ownership. So that's really what we're doing now. But like I said, I had a huge, sense of urgency to grow. When you do decide to get into a lawsuit, it's not cheap. You get what you pay for when it comes to attorneys. And when you're going to go against a $5 billion company, you need to have the very best. So it was a great motivating factor for me and for all of our employees to be able to grow, and I think grow in record time.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, that's a really good overview of your operation. I do some recruiting, and obviously I'm in brokerage as well. We operate in some similar ways as you. We have some sort of different deals, but we also have a great ops team, and we have the same mentality, right? Like if you're great at selling, just go keep selling. We'll take care of the ops for you. But again, we also have a bunch of different deals. And I guess that segues us perfectly, man. Let's get into the meat and potatoes. I've purposely stayed very far away from your case and your situation, knowing that I'd be talking to you myself. So, I mean, for anybody who's not familiar with you, which I'm pretty sure almost just me at this point, I mean, take me through, where does the whole situation start? How do you end up in a court case with Global Trans? Just let's go through it one by one.
Yeah. So how kind of all started, like I said, things were going pretty smooth for quite a while. And then in July 2021, there was an acquisition, or what I like to call a levered buyout is its technical terms. And if someone doesn't know what a levered buyout is, typically you use someone else's debt or capital to go buy a company. Typically, if you research LBOs, someone will LBO or levered buyout a company because they plan to then try to IPO a few years later. So they're temporarily using someone else's debt to buy a company at a lesser valuation. And that was ultimately worldwide goal for many years, was to IPO 2025. There was an article in Bloomberg Business in May of 2024, and they hired JP Morgan Chase to help them prepare to IPO. I believe, given the lawsuits that I have against them, though, and some other things, they will not be able to IPO currently or sell. So, but to backtrack, 2021, they come in, they acquire the business. It was not a merger. Tom Medine, the CEO, Charlene York, they all want to try to publicly say, there's really public articles out there that this was a merger. A merger, you have to file SEC of external and internal documents you have to do. To date, we've not been able to find any of those documents. So it's really a public lie that they were merging. It was an acquisition. When you get rid of one C-level suite, pretty much primarily, and then a new regime comes in, that looks and feels like an acquisition. It just doesn't sound as nice, a hostile takeover per se. So for the first year, not a lot of names, to be honest with you, a gentleman named Rob Rose, who was president of Worldwide Express. He was put in charge to oversee the Global Trans brand and try to fix some of the kinks in it from technology, platform issues, etc. Around the same time, though, is when Worldwide Express started to sponsor NASCAR, which is, their pride and joy per se. And who knows what NASCAR would think about a company doing the heinous things that we'll talk about. But Rob spent a lot of time focusing on NASCAR. So, he wasn't really in the trenches as much, I think, with Global Trans. But then he tragically passed away. He had a heart attack, I believe, in October 2022. Him and I had many great conversations. We didn't always see eye to eye, but he was a great businessman, it seemed like. He understood making money. You're not always going to agree with people, but if you have the end goal, you can, come together. So he tragically passed away. Pretty much the next day, a gentleman named Joel Klum came into the picture. Joel Klum's the COO of Worldwide Express and still is today. And so he really tried to come in from a friendly perspective. Hey, Rob wasn't doing maybe as much as he should have been able to help the agents. I'm here. It's going to be amazing. Kind of like a cheerleader type of individual. Joel's very much the type of guy who will tell you what you want to hear and then stab you in the back when it's time to stab you in the back. And we know people like that, of course. So first month or two, things kind of felt that they felt nice. December 2022 is when we really started to notice sharing of some data that probably shouldn't be happening because, of course, they want to label themselves as the WEX group. But really, you can look at their FDD filings. If someone doesn't know what FDD filings, when you have a franchise program, which is the franchise program, every year with the federal government, with the SEC, you have to file what's called FDD filing. So you can go look at their corporate structure if you want to read through all 500 pages of it, which I did. And how their corporate structure, like Uni Topco Holdings at the top, you have Global Trans over here, you have Worldwide Express over here, you have Unishippers. They're still going to market as separate companies, and even in, social media posts and in public things, they still go to market as separate companies. And so then you start to ask yourself the question of, should they be able to have access to my data, to my profit margins, to my customers, when you have a direct sales force with all W-2 employees with Worldwide Express? And are you starting to pass that data over to them under the table? The answer there should be no. And, this is where the water gets really muddy, because when you wipe out one C-level staff and you don't, replace them or have anyone over there. They had one gentleman, Mike Sutter, who stayed. He was the VP of Agent Development, who I implicated him and sued him personally in the RICO lawsuit, which we'll get into. But he was like really the only one left. So it really, left it open, to have this bad behavior starting to happen. So we start to notice a few of these things. They tried to announce this parcel pilot program. So like I said, Unishippers and really Worldwide Express, their bread and butter, what they love to talk about is their UPS DAP rates. They're a UPS reseller, which I think they used to be very special to have that. Now there's other companies that do it, like InExpress and, Ship Station. So they're not the only pony in town or show in town anymore. Fortunately.
But just before we keep going with this, I'm curious. I mean, if you're even able to talk about, I'm not sure how much you can and can't say regarding all of this. I mean, how did you guys start noticing the data getting kind of shared around?
So we first noticed in December of 2022, we got sent our customer list. And this was supposed to be for this parcel pilot program, which I think was a big front. And they sent us our customer list. We had not approved them to take our customer list at this point. And so that really, my business partner, Natasha, she had some legal experience prior to getting into freight with me, really rubbed her the wrong way. Like, who approved you to scrub our entire customer list? And are you scrubbing everyone else's entire customer list? And I'm talking to other agents, and they're getting the same feeling. They're seeing the same thing. So now
I'm assuming, so you guys are using like their TMS systems and stuff like that to move the freight?
Correct. So they had a TMS called Command Center. Worldwide Express had a TMS called Ship Station, and so did Unishippers. So all the data was in there, versus like now, or probably like I have my own TMS, and you might be using one of the popular companies, or maybe you've done your own. But with all their agents, all the data had in their TMS. So even though they may not maybe not supposed systematic access, from a Worldwide Express W-2 employee who would really be selling against you, or maybe a C-level executive like with Joel Klum, or a gentleman named Alex Stark or Doug Dittman, people who shouldn't probably be sticking their hand in the cookie jar per se, decided maybe I'll stick my hand in the cookie jar and let's see if I get bit. And so people started to catch on to this. So that was the first instance of us getting like a really bad feeling. Because I think a lot of the agents in 2021 felt uncomfortable with this levered buyout, this acquisition, what they wanted to market as a merger, because when anything like that happens, it's big systematic change. And of course, the other side's going to come in and be like, it's going to be, rainbows and sunshines, and we're going to get better LTL rates and, all the normal shit that they're going to tell you. But really, they had a real corporate incentive, or they had devised a plan behind the scenes, which we'll get into. And that was their ultimate goal. It wasn't for betterment of the agents. It wasn't to buy more agencies, because Global Trans, prior to this acquisition of LBO, their real mission, or what they sold you on, was come on, be an agent. It's your own business. You can hire your own employees. They're your customers. That was emphasized. It's your customers. Still to this day, I urge you to come to social media, and they still preach the same shit. That's your customers, your business, grow however you want to grow. And then the big thing was that they would then buy you back at a certain point. So you build a great business, and then you can sell it to them. You can make an exit and hopefully create generational wealth for you and your family. And so that was
basically the end goal here is that once you build up your book and you're kind of sick of it or burnt out or this or that, then they can buy your customers off you, basically your entire book.
100%. And that's, I know some other agency models do the same thing. And that's what Global Trans has been known to do for years. M&As, that's how they grew. It's how a lot of companies grow. If you don't want to organically grow, you do it through mergers and acquisitions. And so them buying, if you looked at their business as a whole, a lot of that came from them buying out agents over time. BLX, Coalition, other people who'd sold to them over the past. So
that's interesting, man. I mean, I love our industry. I love freight. I was on the carrier side for years, so I've seen all of these companies haul freight for all of them. And it's interesting to hear, what goes on behind the scenes, especially now that I've walked into brokerage. I've definitely learned a lot more of the industry from the inside. Because as a carrier, I see, Global Trans, I see all of these companies. I'm hauling their freight. I'm having a good time. I'm having a good experience. And behind the scenes, there's all of these things and how they're growing. And it's really interesting for me to hear the story for sure.
No, 100%, and that's the thing. There's so many different aspects of the industry, from being an asset-based carrier to being a dispatcher to being an agent to being a broker to having your own MC to being a W-2 to being some sort of hybrid. There's
okay, so your customer list comes back to you and you guys start having some weird kind of feelings going on. What happens next? I mean, where's the next kind of key point?
So we start raising a lot of things, and anything that you're learning about me in the podcast today or in the future, if you watch other podcasts, is I'm a very outspoken individual. It comes from my background from being in sports. My parents always told me you do the right thing, you be a moral and ethical individual. God has a plan for you. You need to do right by him and he'll do right by you type of deal. And I heavily believe in karma. So, do the right thing. So when I notice something that, doesn't quite smell right or is a little fishy, I'm going to say something about it. And I'm a bit of a brass individual sometimes. Because I don't really like to sugarcoat it. There's no room for that in life or in business. So if you're unhappy about something, if you recognize something, you need to speak up about it, because if not, you are part of the problem. You perpetuate the problem if you don't. So we started bringing stuff up to Joel Klum, to Tom Medine, to different individuals, Doug Dittman, all these bad actors, Mike Sutter, and we started getting pushback. When it comes to contract negotiations, when it comes to bringing things up, when it comes to the bad debt fund. We had one conversation February 2023. They wanted to sign a new contract for this parcel pilot program, and they tried to pinhole a lot of the agents who they wanted to get into this parcel pilot program, saying, hey, you also need to sign a new agency contract. Well, if I'm trying to get into a contract with Unishippers over here, why does my contract with Global Trans need to change? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And even to this day, never did I sign a contract with Worldwide Express, but then somehow their employees were making decisions over me. Doesn't make a lot of sense. And so during that process, we started asking a lot of questions, like this bad debt fund you have. How is that legal? Please give me the legalese. Please walk me through the legal structure of how you think the bad debt fund operates. And Charlene York, who's their chief legal officer, she's a very pleasant person. She said, well, this is how all the other agency programs do it, Dylan. And, that was her reasoning, for why they did what they did. She also said, well, maybe you shouldn't be an agent here anymore. And, we made some comments, and Joel comes back and tracking, trying to say, oh, we don't need to talk about all of this, etc. And so no one wanted to actually answer the question. When I bring up a thing like a bad debt fund, or I bring up about, lists of customers, that should be able to be a head-on conversation. Your answer shouldn't be, well, everyone else is doing it, and in the Freight Caviar, they made a funny meme about it, or a funny, clip, and I've used this analogy a lot. We're all selling crack cocaine or drugs on the street corner, and we're all having a great time. We're making lots of money. No one's been caught. We're all going to be really comfortable and confident selling illegal or illicit drugs on the street corner. The second someone gets cracked, now we're all going to be scared. And that's a good analogy for the logistics industry. A whole lot of people, like you said, since there's not a lot of rules, there's not a lot of regulations, there's not a good governing body, people are just making shit up as they go. And so when you ask someone who is a chief legal officer, well, why are you doing this? The answer should never be because I tell you, or because it's intimidation, or it's a scare tactic, or we're a $5 billion company, we will basically run you into the ground, or because everyone else is doing it. That is a bullshit excuse. They should be able to walk you through it systematically of here's why we do it. Here's point A, B, C, D, E, and F. You ask a question, they converse with you. That was not the conversation. So the next step would start to rub things the wrong way. With the relationship.
No, I mean, I actually saw, like I said, I've been purposely avoiding you and your case and all these other appearances so I could try to have an organic conversation with you on my end. However, I did see the crack cocaine analogy. I laughed really hard. I was like, I started my morning, I was chilling on my phone. I just saw it. I laughed for like 10 minutes. But I mean, it is what it is, right? That is a good analogy, right? Because just because someone else is doing something can't be your reasoning for also doing something immoral. And I know in the term, like, that's the thing with our industry is there needs to be regulation. There needs to be government oversight. Yes. And technically we have it, but we all know, let's not get into that can of worms. But every time we push for more regulation, like I've always been an advocate in my head. I personally believe, and I believe this to this day, that every load in America, every type of freight that goes into a truck should have a legal bare minimum rate per mile. That has to start existing because, I mean, it doesn't make sense. Like, how can you haul freight out of Florida at 90 cents $1 a mile? There has to be some level where every truck in America has to operate at a certain RPM, and then there has to be variance off of that. And every time I have this conversation, people are like, oh no, like the government can't control us. And then you get into stuff like this, your situation, and our industry is billions and billions and billions of dollars, and it's the Wild West. It's just everybody trying to screw everybody over, and there's nobody stopping it from happening.
No, 100%. Well, and that's the biggest thing, that there's like no transparency in this industry, and it's all these backroom deals, and it's like the good old boys club. I mean, look back to like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I think history, you need to know history, not that you need to look back, all the time, but you need to know history to know what you're getting yourself into. So you look at the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and the mob controlled a lot of the trucking industry. And you had the teamsters, and so now, there's probably still some of those hands in the pot per se. They've just become more professional, but, we have these rules and regulations, but no one follows them. They're super lax. It's why you have cargo theft. It's why you have all these double brokering instances happen. All this stuff is avoidable. But what it would require is, it's like a football coach who never played football. I love that analogy. You talk about football, I talk about football. You have to be able to, know what someone's going through. So when you go into a board meeting with senior level executives like a Joel Clum, et cetera, and they've never booked a truck a day in their life, they've never actually, been an agent, been a W-2, been a broker. They just got placed in some COO position in their 20s or 30s, because of a connection, et cetera. And that happens all the time, not just in the freight industry, financials, et cetera.
Yeah, that happens in every industry.
Yeah, it happens in every industry, but every time you see that happen, I guarantee you there's systematic problems. Because versus if I was in a high-up position, or you were in a high-up position, you've done a lot of different things. So you can actually, tap into your real-world experiences. And if you're going to make a policy or a procedure or a change, it has merit behind it. You've actually booked trucks.
It's going to come out of the basis of a real-world situation I've actually gone through.
100%. So that was when we started to notice some problems. And then After that, about the same time, what our RICO lawsuit's really comprised of is there's a few main parts of it per se, and we'll go through those now. So one of it had to do with the LTL pricing. One of it had to do with the insurance pricing. One of it had to do with systematically stealing customers. And the last part had to do with the bad debt fund. And there will probably soon be another part which we can maybe touch a little bit on today. So the LTL pricing, how we came up with that or how we found out about that is, so you run a quote in their system. So they had their TMS system. As we said, everybody used the same system. So you would plug in the zip codes, the PAL count, the DIMs, the freight class, all the good stuff that we all know about, and it spits you out a cost. So it would say FedEx freight $200, Saia freight $240. You get the point. So that was supposed to be the pure cost. And then whatever you put on it as your profit, that is your gross profit. And then based off of your split as an agent, mine was 70-30. So if we put $100 profit on it, I get 70, they get 30, based off of what they tell me true cost is. So I started having some customers reach out to me and say, Dylan, your price isn't as competitive as what it once was. We've gotten some other quotes, or, hey, I exclusively use you, but I've been losing out on some of my own deals. I had one customer who sold gym equipment, and him and I were good buddies. He used me. He knew we did a good job. We had a competitive price, and he was starting to lose out on some deals. So now what I'm about to talk about is also affecting him and his business. It's affecting consumers. Consumers are paying more for that bag of chips or for that piece of gym equipment because global trends or worldwide is not being truthful about their cost. So this is really a consumer problem as well. It's not just a freight broker agent problem, which is why this lawsuit's catching such big steam. But they would tell us the cost was $200, and that's what you would think the carrier was getting billed. Well, in my 3.5 years there, and I've asked other agents the same thing, and they've said the same exact thing, they would never allow us to see the carrier invoices. Versus the agency program I went to afterwards, they would let you see every carrier invoice. So then you start to ask yourself, why wouldn't they let us see the carrier invoices? Well, it's because they are finagling those, or they're manipulating them. So if they tell me the cost is $200 and then the cost is actually $180, well, then they're pocketing $20 off of the bat, and then they are now making 30% of my gross margin split with them. So that's one thing. And I have emails, and I had a gentleman, we have all the evidence to prove this. That's the most important thing. I'm not just having claims. I know people have to say allegedly and accusations and blah, 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 blah. But I would not be spending my time, energy, and effort doing this, spending hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars when I could just focus on my business if it was over that. And what we're fighting over is over millions and millions of dollars for myself and other agents. So that's the biggest problem here. And so we brought this up to them. We brought up the LTL pricing. So, I called Joel. I said, Joel, we have a problem. I ran 75 quotes in the system, and then I called the carriers. I had my employees call the carriers, and we got quotes over the phone. There's a massive difference here. And he's like, oh, this is a technology problem, Dylan. I said, well, this is a bad technology problem, Joel. We probably need to look into this. And I didn't believe it because I had heard C.H. Robinson doing stuff like this, etc. So then we do the same exercise a few weeks later, same exact thing. We notice a 10, 15, 20% difference versus what the carriers are telling us the cost is in their system versus what we're seeing in our system. So then they tried to blame it on API and EDI connectivity issues. I'm like, so we're still sitting on this technology. So you have that, not being truthful. I had a gentleman named Mike Sutter. He's the VP of Agent Development. He spoke with me, and he even admitted that they had juice on the margins, that they were literally artificially inflating the cost, and he knew this to go back to 2016 when Renee Krug was the CEO.
I mean, this is the thing to me that doesn't make much sense, right? Like, I mean, you're an agent, so technically it's your business and it's your freight, and like, I don't understand. Like, you guys are booking the carriers yourself, right?
Correct. So you would get onto their TMS, you would run all the quotes, and all the 20, 40, 100 carriers would come up, and then you would book it on their TMS.
Okay. So like you guys obviously had access to track the freight, and sometimes like it was inevitable that somebody was going to speak to the carrier and ask them eventually one day, like, hey, how much did you get paid? I mean, it's a weird question, and nobody would really do it, but eventually somebody would, right?
Well, you don't think about it. And then, after I filed all these lawsuits, I've had 100, 200 agents reach out to me, and people have been saying over the years they've brought up global trends. Even Mike Sutter admitted to me, who I said he was one of the vice presidents, that Renee Krug in 2018, when she was the CEO, she knew about it. She literally took it off for a period of time and put it back on. So people were aware of this, but maybe one agent brings it up and they shut them up or they shuffle them off, or, oh no, that's wrong, it's an IT problem. As you get busy in the freight industry, and now you're thinking about your customer, and you're not thinking about
no, I get it. It's like, it's a really easy thing to overlook. It's a really easy thing to not even think about, and it's a really easy thing to get yourself out of. It's just wild to me on the scale of which this is happening, right? Like, this goes back to like those whole debates when the drivers think that the carriers are skimming off the rate cons, and like eventually things catch up with you. But it's just wild to hear it on a scale like this, where you have to dodge these things for a really long time. What's the next pillar of the RICO case?
Yeah, so then the next thing to do with the LTLs is positive adjustments. And this is actually what the big YRC case was about a few years ago. This is where that whistleblower stemmed. So they weren't sharing positive adjustments with the agents. So, and I've talked to a lot of different agency programs now over the last few months. Lots of them have been reaching out to me, asking about the lawsuit. So I asked them all these same questions. Are you open? Do you show your agents the carrier invoices? Do you share with them the positive adjustments? Now, they could be lying to me, but I think most of these guys, they know I will speak about things. So most of them, they want to fight for transparency because that's their unique selling proposition compared to Global Trans or compared to, TQL or whomever. So the next thing was positive adjustments. So everyone I've talked to in the industry, and I have the data to prove it, through our lawsuit, funny enough, Alex, the only thing they didn't want to give me was the invoices from the LTL carriers. So we asked for this in a lawsuit. They're required to give it to you if you agree upon it. In October 2024, Judge Frazier, the judge in Texas, required them to give me the invoices, legally required court order. They had till December 4th, didn't give me the invoices. They tried to give me an Excel spreadsheet of the invoices and say that they didn't get invoiced by the carrier. Now, you're a smart guy and I'm a smart guy, so I don't think we're dumb enough to believe this. You're telling me you just get Excel spreadsheets and you just blindly pay bills off Excel spreadsheets. If so, someone should probably get a new CFO or a new controller. So then they breached that court order. And so then I went and filed subpoenas on December 12th against all the LTL carriers. You don't want to give me the invoices? I'll get them myself. So we filed a court order with the court, subpoenaed Saia, FedEx, ABF, Old Dominion, all of them. And then they started to send us the carrier invoices because they don't have a beef in this fight or an axe in this fight per se. And so we start to see exactly what I thought was happening, and what we knew was happening is they weren't sharing the positive adjustments. So, and people have reiterated this across the entire industry. 15 to 20% of the time, there was a positive adjustment, especially on density-based freight. The freight class changes, this actually works in your favor. Not once in my 3.5-year time span there did I ever see a positive adjustment. So think about this number, Alex. So we already know that there was some funky business going on with the fuel surcharge. That's a lot of money. Now, if they're doing $1 billion of LTL freight a year, and let's say 15 to 20% of the invoices are affected by these positive adjustments that we can look to the YRC case. So that means there's about 150 to $200 million of invoices that would be affected. Let's say 15%, there's a 15% variance on that positive adjustment. We are now talking about $20 to $40 million a year in positive adjustments. When you look at it on a case-by-case analysis, it may not seem like a lot of money. When you're doing $1 billion of business, it's a lot of money. So that was the next big thing.
All of these things are like, it is what it is sort of situation when you think about it, on a smaller scale. But when you look at it on a massive scale, this isn't like this is affecting one person or 100 people. Like, this is thousands. Like you said, this even goes down to a consumer issue when it's on a scale this big, right?
Yes. So you have the fuel surcharge that people from Global Trans who worked there in 2010, so they knew this shit was going on in 2010. So this could have been going on for 15 years. So we have fuel surcharge. We got not giving positive adjustments. The next thing we had was the insurance. So we could sell third-party insurance on any of the loads through a company called Falvey. And so, I had some other agents at conferences be like, hey, I got an invoice accidentally and something's not matching up. So we start to do some research. So we'll just use this for an example, a simplistic state, and say allegedly. So allegedly, they were telling us the cost was $35 for the invoice. And that was a pass-through cost for the minimum insurance third party, which let's say is $15,000. Well, then allegedly they were paying $10 to the insurance provider, making $25 rips off the bat. And then with their policy, every $100 you got charged more. So let's say in this example that per $100 they're telling you the cost is 30 cents. Well, the cost is actually 15 cents. Once again, as you and I just said, that doesn't sound like a lot of money when you just say it on a one-time instance. On a $200,000 insurance policy, that's $400 they're making on one policy. Times that by.
I mean, it's almost comical to me, actually, because like it's a brokerage that's making margins off of everything else that they're not supposed to be. But it's kind of comical because, in this alleged scenario that, I mean, making margins on everything along the way in a brokerage, right? Like everything you're not allowed to touch, they're making a margin on, like that typical broker.
They're trying to make money all over the place. And here's the beautiful thing, and this is why I know you're over, wherever you're at in the world, but on Friday in the U.S. we have a court hearing. And so the defendants have tried to file a motion to seal, Alex. And what that means is in Texas, you got Rule 76A. So typically this is used in like rape cases, terrorist crimes, high-level intelligence, protecting kids. That's what you would use a motion to seal. They're trying to seal all the evidence because when we got into our first lawsuit, September 2023, we had to agree to a protective order. So what that means is you have confidentiality designations, and then you have AEO, which is attorney eyes only designations. And so as they start to produce documents to you, they have to fit in different pillars. So they either have no designation, they have a confidentiality designation, or attorney's eyes only. So I can't see those, only my attorneys can see them. Well, with each of those designations, there's a description. So confidential documents, if you want to try to label it confidential, it's supposed to be, trade secrets only to the business. Well, you planning to fire me, you planning to terminate me, you talking about fraud with the insurance, those are not confidential. So what this court hearing is on Friday, it's to strike down their motion to seal, because in America you have open court systems, so other people like yourself, other hardworking Americans who are agents should be able to see these things. And then we are also arguing that the designations they use, they overused and overabused, which is the typical rhetoric or typical playbook of a multi-billion-dollar company. And that, of course, increases the plaintiff, which is me, your legal expenses, etc. So hopefully after Friday, Alex, we're going to be able to share all this stuff publicly. There's 79 redactions in the lawsuit. So one of these redactions has to do with the CFO, Jack Perlstein, and Ben Hostler talking about the insurance. If you saw this email, which hopefully I'll be able to share very soon, you would be appalled. So we're talking about fraud with a fucking capital F at the C-level suite. I've talked to other people who own agency programs, Priority One, Armstrong, et cetera, and none of these people understand why they didn't just want to try to settle things with us in a nice, amicable manner, because now all their things are going to be exposed, and I'm making damn sure of it. So we got the LTL pricing with the fuel. We got the LTL pricing with the positive adjustments. We got the insurance. The next one is stealing of customers. So at first,
before we get into the stealing of customers, I have a question I'm supposed to ask you later on, but it segues into this. Like, why did you not decline to settle? I mean, is this like a moral thing to you? I mean, what's your kind of reason?
Yeah. So our first state lawsuit is, pretty much that they should have bought our business. They bought many other businesses before us. We had talks about them buying our business with Joel Klum and Tom Medine, but how they like to buy businesses is very disadvantageous to the agent. They wanted to buy businesses on your split. So if you had a 70-30 split, they only wanted to start your negotiation at your 70% mark. And then they wanted to buy for like 2.5 times EBITDA, not the going rate, which would be 5 to 8, 5 to 10 times EBITDA. So they knew I was probably never going to sell, which probably also contributed to them doing all the malicious things that they were going to do to me. But when they did try to settle, they tried to settle on December 12th, the day we filed the RICO lawsuit, 2024, and they gave me what I would deem a very offensive offer. Most people might think it was a big offer, but when you look at what I should have actually been able to sell my company for, had they not tortiously interfered, Alex, they actually were emailing my customers the day they terminated me, saying they had purchased or acquired me, which then my kind customers sent to me. So if you had not done all these malicious things that were premeditated and pre-planned and with malicious intent, then you wouldn't be in the position that you're in today. So for them to settle, they need to, one, pay me the amount of money that we should have been owed. And then two, now it's becoming a moral and ethical thing. Because like I said, when we filed this, I thought that it was just happening to us. So, okay, it's going to be a dispute between us and them. We'll get to the bottom of it. Bygones will be bygones. We started seeing this. This wasn't just happening to me. I go public with this. I hire a PR company in December 2024, and I start realizing that hundreds of agents are reaching out to me, current, past agents, W-2 employees, telling me stories of this happening to them as well. And so now I feel like I have an obligation to speak about this, because I've said it before on other podcasts and other people who personally know me. I want to get into politics later on in my life, after all this is said and done. And so I feel like this is an amazing platform to make people aware, as you've mentioned, as I've mentioned, as I think almost everybody's mentioned, there needs to be more transparency. There needs to be more regulations. There needs to be more accountability with everyone involved in the logistics industry. So now it's kind of a twofold thing. Of course, they still need to pay me the money that they rightfully owed me and tried to steal from me, essentially. But then I also need to make this known in the industry because for various reasons, whether it's financial, scare tactics, people not wanting to lose their business, etc., no one's wanting to come out and talk about this publicly because for risk of retaliation, for risk of the cost of getting into lawsuits, losing customers, etc. So, that's ultimately where my end goal is and where it lies and why we haven't, been silenced as of yet.
Oh, of course. I mean, when this gets resolved, if this starts getting resolved, how do you see this potentially reshaping the freight agent programs in the future? How do you see freight agent programs evolving once the lawsuit is resolved, and how will this empower future agents to assert their rights? What advice would you give them, assuming that this all closes how you guys want it to?
No, I think that's a great question. I think it's probably already changing the agent industry. As I said, I've talked to many other people who are some of the CEOs, presidents of other big agent programs, and they said they are hawk-eyeing this case, because global trans or worldwide is going to become the Martha Stewart or the Michael Vick of the freight industry. They are going to be the ones who an example is made out of, because they just keep letting this go. And so I think it's already changing the agent programs. If they are unintelligent enough to let this go to court, now there will be court precedents about bad debt funds, about LTL pricing, about insurance policies, about all of these things. So now systematically it would probably 100% change. But I think even if this thing settles before court, I think it's already changed the agent models. I think it's getting people to think about things they never thought about. And to answer your question about what should the agents be doing, I think almost every agent in the industry has probably heard about this case or heard about it 100 times by now. You need to start asking the pertinent questions. And we talked about this in the Freight Caviar podcast of who are you doing business with? If you ask them these questions, are they willing to sit down and have an open, honest conversation with you? Or are they doing what Charlene York did and just giving you an answer? Well, this is what everybody else is doing. Don't accept that answer. If you're going to get into a new contract with an agency, make sure you hire an attorney. I promise you, spending that $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 to go hire a very good attorney to sit down and look at that contract with you and redline the shit out of it. Go present that to the people you want to do business with. And if they aren't willing to have a nice conversation with you, open and honest about all of your redline provisions,
that tells you all you need to know.
Do not do business with those people. They have an ulterior motive. They're going to try to screw you in the end. And so that's what I would urge any agent. And if you have a contract right now that's unfavorable, go talk to your people. If they don't want to have that conversation, you immediately know who you're in business with, who you're partnered with. Because really, I think the thing that could flip the agency model on its head the most, in my first lawsuit, September 2023, which soon we'll have our fourth amended complaint after Friday, hopefully, with lots of fun information. I ultimately think in a lot of these deals, the agent-principal relationship is not a true agent-principal relationship. I think it's more of a partnership. And in the state of Texas, which is where our contracts were governed out of, if you have a partnership and your partner wants to get rid of you for any reason, your partner has to buy you out at fair market value. So if we really drill down on what is a partner shares in the profits and the losses. Well, of course, we all know we share in the profits with your gross profit or your GP split. But in the model of Global Trans and Worldwide Express, you weren't even sharing in the losses. The agent was eating all the losses because they had this bad debt fund where they held 1% of your net revenue in an escrow account, which in and of itself is not legal to put your money in an escrow account where they're making money on your money. They, of course, wanted to try to deny this. but I had individuals high up saying this was done. But they put your money in an escrow account. At 120 days, they would pull back your commissions as the agent. And then at the end of the year, they would use your money to pay for the carrier cost, although Global Trans or Worldwide Express was the one to approve the credit line for the customer. So Global Trans or Worldwide Express is the bank in this model. They are the creditor. Your customer is the debtor. Well, you have now been made responsible for that entire amount of the invoice, which if they wanted to have this bad debt fund, you know what they should probably do, like a factoring company would do, is give you a notice of release. And they would have to inform your customer that you now owned the debt. You were the creditor. The customer would individually pay you. And now you as the agent would be able to go sue the customer, collect from the customer, write it off on your own bad debt.
Yeah.
What Global Trans and Worldwide would do, how this is 100% a partnership and not an agent principal relationship, is they would make you pay for it. They would keep that invoice, Alex, open in their system. So even once you paid for it, the invoice is paid in full. They would keep that invoice open, because if you know anything about accounting, if you have open invoices, accounts receivable coming in, you can pump up your profit margins or your incoming profits. And then they would do one better. They'd sell it to a third-party collections agency, because I would literally have customers reach out to me a year later and be like, Dylan, why am I getting a collections notice? You know, and so they were triple and quadruple dipping when it came to the bad debt. So really, that's why I believe you'd really shake up the agency model, is if this lawsuit goes to court, it's deemed, yes, these agency models are really more indicative of a partnership, not of a principal agent relationship. Now you flipped an entire industry on its head because, you know, of how it's actually set up. You know, just because you have in a contract that it says agent principal does not mean that's what the court's going to decide. Because if it looks like a duck, smells like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's probably a fucking duck. You know, so
I mean, after uncovering all of this nonsense, man, if you were to do all of this all over again, would you say a smaller brokerage that is honest and transparent would be a better fit for most freight agents, or do you think mega brokerages would still have a place really in the choice process? What do you think about it, and what are the benefits? Maybe
I think there's positives and negatives to both. I think a smaller brokerage, if you actually deal with an open and honest individual like myself, or I'm sure like yourself, you seem like a great guy, and they're willing to have those conversations about the contracts, about how they operate, 100%, that's probably a better bet. Those people probably haven't gotten the corporate greed get the best of them yet. And those people just become money hungry at that point. Probably the downside to it is what the financial solvency of a smaller brokerage. We've seen a lot of people going out of business. So maybe that's, you know, do they pay their carriers in the correct days to pay? You know, so there could be some other questions, you know, what's their P&L look like? You know, how much cash do they have on hand? You know, do they use a factoring company or not? You know, if they do, you know, how does the vetting process go, get customers approved for credit? So versus what they run in-house. So, yeah, I mean, I think there would be some questions to ask. The big models, I'm not saying one doesn't exist that's good, but there's a whole lot of corporate, what I would call espionage, or maybe terrorism at play. And those sound like big brash words, but ultimately I think that's kind of what it is. And like you said, and like this lawsuit depicts, there's just money being made everywhere, you know. And something I even learned of recently, which I talked about on another podcast a little bit with Gabe, and will be coming out in the next few weeks, is, you know, what's their true relationship with LTL carriers and these big brokerages, especially these agent models. You know, because these agent models or these big brokerages like Worldwide Express and Global Trans are spending tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars with the LTL carriers. And I know for a fact that they were giving rebates or credits to their own customers, because we had other agents who told us about this. I knew these things were happening. I had high-level people telling me these things were happening. But then you have to start to ask yourself the question, which I won't get into too much today, is this happening on the opposite side? Are they getting these things from the LTL carriers? So if you spend $1 billion a year in LTL, and there's maybe potential, allegedly, rebates happening or kickbacks happening from the LTL carriers to them, I mean, that could be $30 to $50 million a year right there, Alex, you know, which is a whole nother piece of the pie that we haven't talked too much yet
I
about.
mean,
So,
I think you really kind of touched on it when we hit up, the Teamsters sort of mafia controlling the trucking industry back in the day. I mean, all of these things really does go back to, like, it reminds me of like a Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, like Goodfellas, like chilling in some room, things just keep kind of happening. Like,
yes.
so, I mean, all these alleged things remind me a lot of like the movie Las Vegas. There's like any Robert De Niro kind of
Yes.
gangster movie.
Well, that's a problem. People getting paid
That's
off
a
or
problem.
bribed all over the place. Hey, if you push us more business, we'll give you this rebate or this kickback. So now you're more incentivized to push, one LTL carrier business versus the other. And now you pen them against each other. That could be one example. And then, like I said, really the last piece of the pie, or the last piece of the puzzle, is the systematic stealing of customers. So our two customers they did this with, they did it with many other customers after. Then I had many other agents reach out to me and tell me this happened with their customers. So, for instance, our largest customer was Redcon One, fastest growing supplement company in America, a gentleman I met in person. We had a great relationship with them for almost 3 years. Nothing was going wrong. They loved us. We loved them. We were actually looking to get into future business endeavors with that customer, on the side. Every month we had to send their CFO monthly reports of every single load that we ran, what price it was ran at. I broke it down for the cost per pound even for them, because that was the smallest metric I could think of, so they could actually look at their freight costs and anticipate things for months to come. So really, and my team did all of that for them. That was nothing to do with Global Trans. We did that all for them because I wanted to preach transparency. That was a stipulation. The customer was owned by private equity, Trivest out of Miami. So every month we send that to the controller, the COO, the CFO. They had all the access to the data to quote us out whenever they wanted, etc. May of 2023, it comes to our attention that we are supposedly overcharging the customer. I don't know how you overcharge customer, Alex, when you give them data sheets every single month and their CFO is seeing the data. But somehow I'm overcharging the customer. So Worldwide Express ends up telling us to stop talking to the customer, that I'm no longer allowed to book freight. Later, I come to find out through connections I had there that they were also told to stop booking with us and stop doing all their employees were to stop talking to me. They were to stop shipping with us. This customer was spending over $1 million a month with me in freight spend between truckload and LTL. And then we were about to onboard them with their small parcel, which was about $500,000 a month, which was going to be the largest small parcel account ever for Worldwide Express and Unishippers. So we're talking, 18 to $20 million of business with this one customer between freight shipping and small parcel. So they tell them to stop talking to us. They tell them to stop booking with us. They use this stupid excuse of I'm overcharging them, although for 3 years they got all the spreadsheets, which I still have. I pulled up right now on the podcast. I have all the spreadsheets. And so then the customer tells me that they start working that, because I had a buddy there and several buddies. And I said, hey, who are you guys using if you're not using me now? Oh, we're using C.H. Robinson. I'm like, son of a bitch. Like, I thought I organically lost this customer, but something just, there's blood in the water. And Joel Klum's all over this thing. And like I said, I had a lot of interactions with him at this point. I'm like, this dude just isn't right. There's something about him that's not right. And so about 2 weeks later, my business partner, Natasha, gets an email by accident from one of the Worldwide Express employees on their truckload team talking about running truckloads for my customer. And I'm like, yeah, we didn't lose them to C.H. Robinson. We got poached by the person who's supposed to be my partner. Come to find out, they give the customer in excess of a $1.5, $1.6 million credit. They don't keep them on the Global Trans brand. They move them over to the Worldwide Express brand. So they move all their accounts receivable. They give them a $1.6 million credit. They put them into a 3-year exclusivity contract for their small parcel and their freight, where they can only work with Worldwide Express. And then later on, they tried telling me that I owed them money because the customer didn't pay their bills. So that was...
Yes, but it's funny to me, right? So they want all your data. They want info on all your customers. They want to see everything. And then they turn around and they put the customer into a place where you'll never see it. Like,
100%. And then they did the same thing with our second largest customer, a guy named Dominic Iokavone. He owns, many people have heard about this brand. He was on the Inc. 5000, 7th fastest privately held company in America this past year. He's built a very good business. He has Raw Sports, Revive Sports, Bum Energy. If you're familiar with bodybuilding, Chris Bumstead's one of the owners, and Vaughn's Treats. So I had a 10-year exclusivity deal with that gentleman, and that was actually his idea. I could show you the emails. His attorney wrote up the contract. He came to me in March 2023 after the GNC conference in America in Las Vegas. Said, hey, I know you work with a lot of supplement companies in America. We're getting ready to go into Sam's Club, Costco, etc. My current lady doesn't know how to do this. I want an online portal, etc. I said, perfect, Dom. I got all that for you, buddy. I fly down to Port St. Lucie. We can save the money on the freight. All's good. About a month later, he comes to me and, hey, I'd love to get you into a 10-year exclusivity deal. I don't want to think about the freight. We agreed upon everything. We get into the contract. So when we get terminated on June 2nd, Charlene York, the pleasant lady she is, calls the customer, tells them that we weren't allowed to get into a contract, that we were doing illegal things. Alex, still to this day, I haven't been sued for any illegal things. So these illegal things I did, I don't know what they were. And then funny enough, because I actually ended up suing that gentleman in the state of Florida for him and his 4 companies because he improperly broke his 10-year contract with me. He had to give us documents, which there's no protective order in that case, so I can gladly talk about it. He gave me an email where he emailed the Worldwide Express in October of 2023 saying the only reason I stopped working with Dyaln and Freight Essentials is because you told me to. And now I'm afraid that he's going to sue me for the 10-year contract that I breached on your behalf. So that was our second customer who they were spending millions of dollars a year now. I have a buddy who works there telling me that they're spending over $1 million a month now on freight. And I should have been doing their freight for the next 8.5 years on a contractual agreement that Dominic and his chief legal officer came up with. Her name's Margaret Lai. So, that's why, people want to say allegedly or accusations. I'm just chomping at the bit over here, Alex, because I got all the data. I got all the documents. They had to give me millions of documents they didn't want to give me. To be funny, they still haven't given me those carrier invoices. I got them from the LTL carriers, but legally, Global Trans still needs to give me the carrier invoices. So if you're listening, Global Trans, I'm still waiting for my carrier invoices from you, but it's okay.
All of this hurts, man, because it's an industry I love. It's an industry I'm passionate about. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, I haven't been here long enough, but I'm gonna, keep pushing my career. Everybody starts somewhere. But it's just it hurts, man. Like, it really hurts. Half a decade I've been in trucking and I really love it and I'm going to stay in it. But it's just like, I'm one of those kind of guys. I wouldn't call myself a pessimistic person. More realistic. Yes. Like, I understand corporate greed. I understand, the economy. I understand capitalism. And to some degree, you're going to understand all of these things are going to happen once companies reach certain levels. And obviously, at the top, when this type of money is involved, it's tempting. It just hurts when you start hearing it and systematically hearing it, and the emails are like right in front of you, and you still feel like you don't want to believe it because you love the industry. But it's corporate greed is going to exist in every industry. So.
No, that's the problem, and this problem has perpetuated itself. I've talked to people who work for LTL carriers who have been in the business for 30 years. And we talk about things like carrier rebates and stuff that I haven't even deep dove into yet. Trust me, it's coming out in weeks to come. $50 more million of fraud here. People love when I talk about these numbers because they think I'm like fucking crazy. But if this was a class action lawsuit, which may be the next thing to come, mark my words right now. If a class action lawsuit got filed against Worldwide Express, this is a $600 to $800 million class action lawsuit. When you times all these things up over a period of time, over the thousands of people that this has affected, and when I've talked to owners or presidents of other agency programs, that's why they said they don't understand why these people haven't come to the table and just done the right thing, apologize for what they did, admit their wrongs. But that takes an emotionally mature individual to recognize that they did something they shouldn't have done. They messed with someone they shouldn't have done. And this can become a massive problem. This is why I keep talking about, why I keep being light to it. And as you'll see in the weeks and months to come, when we can start sharing this evidence, people, just like yourself and other people, after having a conversation with me, they're appalled by what they're hearing, and if you ask yourself logically, if you're someone sitting at home, why would I spend and waste my time? Why would I spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in legal fees to try to create some lie? That makes no sense. I can go make millions of dollars. We've already grown another massive company that will be doing $30, $40 million by the end of the year. I don't need to sit here and waste my time and just pay lawyers and put money in their pockets for no reason. That makes no sense. The reason I'm coming about this is because they doubted I had the financial means. I'm the type of person, if you tell me you can't do this, I'm sure as shit going to figure out a way that I can do it. So when you wanted to threaten me that you're a $5 billion company and you have more resources than me, that's not how my parents raised me. If you're going to try to punch me first in a fight, which they threw the first punch, they terminated me. You should have knocked me out and tried to kill me right then and there. Because if I get up, I'm going to find a way through, my past experiences. And, I know I can sell. I know I can do these things. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to scrap back. And that's exactly what we've done. And so that's why I feel so compelled to talk about it, because other people need to know exactly what's going on. They need to know what type of business they're getting into. They need to know what questions that they can ask, so this doesn't happen to other people. And you'll see in the next few weeks, there's a current active agent, which is going to be big news. I have an active agent who's been there a long time, who's going to join the lawsuit, the RICO lawsuit. There's a previous W-2 employee who was treated very poorly. He was an older gentleman, built a great book of business, fantastic guy. I've talked to him, really got to know him. And they wronged him out of millions of dollars, out of other things. And it's just wrong. And so once those two guys join, I think it's going to be like fireworks. They're not going to know what to do. And then even last week, and I talked to the same gentleman today, one of the top 5 agencies there. I talked to them. They know what's going on. They have also talked to 2 of the other top 5 agents, and they all know what's going on. And now they're trying to decide how can they get in on the fight with me. So now you might potentially have the top 3 agencies, which are doing $100+ million of business collectively. You got myself, who I'm not going to stop. I can't be beat. You already thought you could outspend it. That failed. You're going to have another current agent join. You're going to have a former W-2 employee join. So now we can go look at all the bad things they're doing to W-2 employees. And then maybe we just say, screw it, when you start a class action lawsuit and it's $600, $700, $800 million. That's the type of fire that you want to play with. That's okay. I've had attorneys reach out to me. One very popular gentleman in Dallas, and he said, I will take the case on full contingency, which I said, well, I don't need that, but that's a very nice gesture. That's how much these attorneys, he said it was one of the best RICO lawsuits he had seen in maybe 10 or 15 years. And there was so much money behind it, so much fraud behind it. And with RICO, most people, as you mentioned with the mob and the trucking in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, most people, when you talk about RICO, you think it has to do with, the
criminal organizations.
Yeah, but it's actually civil, so it's a very serious things that you're starting to get into. So, we'll be very, very interested to see what comes. Very interested to see what happens on Friday.
Very happy to see you advocating for our industry and being the person that's, agent of change. And yes. I got one last question for you before we get out of here. Of course. What are your thoughts on the 4th quarter review? What advice would you give to new agents on how to effectively get started in this industry?
Yeah, I think if you want to start in this industry or you want to be an agent in this industry, I think the biggest thing is you just got to work hard, and every day show up for yourself, have a reason why you're doing this, whether that's, that you don't want to, make the same type of money, you want to be able to have employees, you want to be able to affect people's lives, whatever it is that you're doing, that's why I think you really need to find out your reason why, so that's why I would give anybody advice to when it comes to getting into business, whether you're with the agents, because W-2 has a bit more structures, things to protect you, employees' rights, labor rights, stuff like that. If you're an agent, think about, what program you're going to be involved with. Ask the proper questions. Ask to see the contract. Ask, are they my customers? Are you going to try to say they're your customers? I think that's the most important thing. If I've learned anything in my time in business, and like yourself, I've been in the logistics business since 2017. I think the biggest thing is you need to live and die by contracts, fortunately or unfortunately. So really read through those, and see what's in there. Ask the proper questions. And if the person that you want to get in business with is willing to answer all of those questions for you, then I think you're golden. But if they're not willing to answer those questions, then hey, I mean, you can still make your own decision. Everyone's human, and you can make whatever decision you want. But if you're really trying to avoid conflict in the future, and you really want to feel good about the place that you're making your home, and you want to have a solid foundation and be able to thrive there for years to come, you should feel good about that, opportunity. So that would be my biggest advice to anybody when you're becoming an agent, getting into the freight industry. Ask the proper questions, do the due diligence, but be prepared to work hard, because I don't care if you're a W-2 employee, an agent, you want to get your own MC, whatever the case may be. If you need to be willing to work hard, and if you're persistent, consistent, and disciplined, then I think the sky's the limit for what you can reach in this industry. And hopefully soon we'll see more regulation in the industry to protect individuals like myself, new people who haven't even been in the industry yet. That's my ultimate goal long term, is to get involved with the Department of Transportation, get involved with people in legislative, lawmakers, etc., to hopefully be able to be someone to start to create that change. And I won't just be someone up on Capitol Hill talking about it. I have no clue what I'm doing. I will have covered trucks. I will have booked trucks. We will have had one of the most interesting lawsuits probably in the logistics industry in a long time. And I think that'll be a very positive thing for people to look at. So that's really what my hope is out of all of this and moving forward.
Well, I mean, shout out to Purple Squirrel for putting the show together and giving me the chance to sit down with you and meet you, man. And anything I can do to help you along the way with all of this, I will. I'm really happy to see somebody just passionate about trying to do better for this industry. That's always been my goal throughout my career here.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm like rather deflated emotionally. It's like tough to have like an interesting voice now, just going through all of these things. But I was debating to do it or not to do it. But we'll end it on a lighthearted note, man. I have my most famous recurring question. Obviously, you're in the fitness industry, and I'm back into it as well. But on the rare occurrence when you eat chicken wings, man, you prefer drums or flats?
I probably prefer drums.
Drums and ranch or blue cheese on the dipping sauce.
I'll do ranch, and I like a good honey barbecue sauce. As my
I like any honey, spicy honey, barbecue,
Yes.
anything to do with honey, man. I'm there.
Yeah, if you can get that a little bit of sweet in there. But yeah, I mean, ranch. I remember in my football playing days when I was a little bit chubbier, I would do the Domino's pizza, dip it in the ranch. You want to get some calories in. You play offensive line. That's a nice, easy 2,000-3,000 calorie meal. You get 6-12 wings. I remember. I'll leave it at this. I'll sound like a real, large person heart. I remember in high school, we would have our, summer conditioning, and it would be like 8, 9 a.m. for 1-2 hours with the strength coach. A guy named Patrick Fitzgerald, my strength coach. I can kind of give all my praises to him for my love for strength conditioning, owning a gym now. He really made me fall in love with working out. But we would do that. We'd go outside. We'd do our conditioning on the football field, the ladder drills, the bags, everything on the turf. And then it would be like 10:30, 11 o'clock. Well, I doubt they do it anymore because I don't know how they made money. But in America, you got Buffalo Wild Wings. And so they used to do like $9.99 from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. All you could eat wings and fries. And we would go like 10 of us. And I think they wanted to kick us out of the restaurant because we would go to like 50, 60 wings a piece, 8 to 10 baskets of fries. And then, now as someone who's into health and fitness, I go back and I look at the calories and the fat and the saturated fat. I'm like, how the fuck did I not have a heart attack? But yeah, so that was my wing eating story for you. If you love wings, I don't know if Buffalo Wild Wings still has it, but it was a hell of a deal when they did.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, we had Buffalo Wild. So I was born and raised in Toronto. I spent my whole life in Toronto. We had Buffalo Wild Wings, but we had a place every Tuesday that would do 99-cent wings. So every wing was 99 cents. They made all their money back on the beer, I guess, and we would absolutely abuse that place as well. And speaking back to the O-lineman days, I did play O-line, and I had a McDonald's in my backyard during those days. So that was my that fueled my O-line abilities, I think, McDonald's. Oh, did I lose you? Hey, can you hear me?
I think it froze a little bit, but I think we're good.
Okay. Anyways, we got a good place to leave it. Thank you, Dylan. I look forward to watching, how all this progresses. If you ever need somebody, stay in contact. And I'll hit you back up in 90 days with my next one set PR on deadlift to see where we push it.
Perfect, man. I really appreciate you having me on. And it's been an amazing time. Great to know you. And hopefully we can connect in person. We can grab a workout. We can grab a healthy meal. And really, that's what this is all about: is making connections in the industry, making lifelong friendships all over the world. Like when I was talking to Tom last week, he was in Poland, and I know he's coming to the U.S. for a big conference next week. And that's really my favorite thing about this industry is you can create so many good relationships. So that's why, it's unfortunate we have to talk about some of the things we talked about. Because obviously those were some, at one point, great relationships that ended up turning into more sour relationships. But I think that's the best part about this industry, whether it's you dealing with your customers, doing in-person visits, going to conferences, it's the relationships that you get to build. And ultimately in life, when you look back at everything, it's all going to be your experiences and the relationships that you have, that's my favorite part of this. So I really appreciate you having me on. You spend the time with me. This afternoon or this evening, wherever people are at in the world, and look forward to being back on with you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Good luck with everything. Keep in touch, and like I said, this Friday, man, I'm interested to see what ends up happening for you.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate it, Alex, and you have a good rest of your day, man.
Yeah, you too. That's gonna wrap up Asset Base Season 2, Episode 4 with Dylan, the CEO over at Freight Essentials. We're all going to be, sitting at the edge of our seats waiting for the Friday verdict and all the things that are going to happen there. That's going to be it for me for today, and have a good rest of your day, everybody.